are used to thinking of pleasure as something good. But what if pleasure could be used as a tool for social and philosophical oppression? This is the terrifying idea explored by Aldous Huxley in his phenomenal novel, Brave New World, frequently listed among the greatest books of the 20th century. A close reading reveals a depth of philosophical insight almost unmatched by any other dystopian novel. While other totalitarian visions focus on the suffering caused by state repression, Brave New World presents a world where nearly everyone is happy, living in a hedonistic paradise. Yet they remain permanently disconnected from any real emotional or philosophical depth. Most citizens exist in a superficial state of happiness, though a few souls dare to rebel. The novel is set in a post-war version of Earth, where a global government rules, controlled by 10 governors known as controllers. Their policies revolve around stability and pleasure, dictating every aspect of life, from birth legislation to drug programs and cultural norms. Citizens are artificially created in state-controlled incubators, and from that moment, their fate is sealed. They are divided into classes from Alpha Plus to Epsilon, and their designated letter determines their entire lives, from education to work and social status. The Alpha Plus individuals become the world's future leaders and scientists, while Deltas and Epsilons are condemned to servile tasks. Depending on their class, embryos are either nurtured for optimal physical and intellectual development or deliberately hindered with alcohol and other substances. Once born, children are raised by the state, and the concepts of mother and father are entirely forbidden. Every child belongs to the government and undergoes psychological conditioning to instill specific beliefs about culture, society, and class hierarchy. Alphas are taught to look down on deltas and epsilons, while the lower classes are conditioned to revere the alphas from a distance. As they grow, they have access to the happiness-inducing drug soma, available on demand. Any feelings of sadness or distress are met with encouragement to take a dose, restoring their supposed peace of mind. Misery is highly stigmatized, and the idea of empathy is seen as outdated. The story follows Lenina Crown, Bernard Marx, and Helmholtz Watson as they encounter John, the savage, who was born outside the world state. The plot intensifies when Bernard takes Lenina on vacation to a savage reservation, one of the few places untouched by the world state, where people live in tribal communities. There, Bernard meets John and his mother, Linda, a former world state citizen accidentally left behind years earlier. Bernard brings them back to civilization, and at first, John's arrival benefits Bernard socially. John, fascinated yet disturbed, explores the world he had only heard about in stories. Bernard, a psychologist, is intrigued by John's radically different mindset, shaped outside the state's control. Helmholtz, working in propaganda, longs for unrestricted artistic expression and is captivated by John's chaotic experiences and Shakespeare's forbidden works. Linda, however, chooses to spend her remaining days in a drug-induced coma, a decision widely accepted in society, except by John, who finds artificial happiness abhorrent. Eventually, Linda's body succumbs to the drugs, causing her health to fail. John, devastated, cries beside her, publicly expressing his grief and love. This behavior scandalizes society, as death is considered trivial and natural birth morally repugnant. Children are taken on tours of the dying to desensitize them, and individuals deemed no longer useful to the state are considered worthless. John's unpredictable emotions disturb those around him, and he, Bernard, and Helmholtz are summoned before Mustafa Aman, one of the 10 world controllers. In a fascinating philosophical exchange, John and Mustafa debate the value of different human experiences. Mustafa exiles Bernard and Helmholtz to isolated islands designated for those with dangerously original thoughts, but allows John to remain free. Seeking isolation, John moves into a lighthouse, attempting to live in opposition to the hedonistic values of the New World. He adopts a primitive lifestyle, rejecting every symbol of the civilization he despises. However, his presence attracts curiosity, and he becomes a public spectacle. Unable to find solitude, John ultimately takes his own life. Whether as a final act of defiance or despair, the only living counterexample to the world state's ideology is gone, and the dystopia remains unchanged. Huxley's depiction of this controlled society raises significant philosophical questions. If thought influences action and action influences society, how could the world state tolerate thinkers like Dostoevsky or Nietzsche? In a world that prioritizes stability, revolutionary ideas are inherently destabilizing. But why should individuality matter if everyone is seemingly content? Many argue that erasing individuality leaves people feeling empty and unfulfilled. But in Brave New World, that argument no longer applies. There is no indication that individual identity would make citizens happier. They are satisfied with their social roles and experience more hedonistic pleasure than most of us ever will. Yet something feels missing. Even in the absence of suffering, the loss of individuality seems like a tragedy. Ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle believed the highest human good was eudaimonia, or flourishing, a fulfilling state reached through virtue and self-discovery. Brave New World presents a society that has eliminated individuality, absorbing every person into a collective public identity. At first glance, this loss appears to make people happier. Unlike Orwell's 1984, where oppression is clearly linked to suffering, Huxley's world eliminates suffering entirely. But what if that itself is the problem? The deterministic class system of the novel exaggerates how, in reality, many aspects of our lives are dictated by circumstances beyond our control. We may not live in a world as extreme as Huxley's, but we often overlook how our environment functions similarly, shaping our development in ways we rarely question. John's introduction to the futuristic society highlights the destruction of creativity. Shakespeare's works, which John cherishes, are banned. The immersive entertainment he encounters is shallow and predictable, lacking emotional or intellectual depth. Helmholtz, though talented, cannot fully grasp the depth of John's passion for literature, as his capacity for deep emotional expression has been erased. This culminates in a conversation between John and Mustafa, where Mustafa views art's decline as a small price for a painless world. He fails to see that creativity unites individuals with their work, preserving their identity while expressing something deeply personal. Throughout history, some of the most profound narratives revolve around love and loss. In the New World, love is seen as absurd. Relationships are recreational and devoid of genuine affection. Love in this society merges extreme individualism with collectivism. While appearing free, it limits emotional depth. True connection requires time, attention, and selflessness, treating others as more than mere sources of pleasure. The world state maintains control through shame and isolation. Bernard, for example, is alienated due to his differences. His rejection by society leads him to stop taking soma and experience sadness as an act of rebellion. He longs for acceptance yet resents the society that excludes him. Children are conditioned to crave social belonging, making shame an especially potent form of control. If one fails to meet societal expectations, they are left permanently isolated and alone. Finally, Brave New World explores the controversial concept of sacrifice. Many philosophical traditions, including Christianity, emphasize sacrifice as a moral necessity. Without something greater than oneself to value, life becomes directionless. The dystopia of Brave New World feels tragic because its people are deprived of anything worth sacrificing for. Instead, they live only for pleasure, avoiding discomfort at all costs. True goodness often involves sacrificing for others. Yet the world state replaces sacrifice with quick fixes like Soma. John ultimately rejects this empty existence, choosing pain and authenticity over illusion and comfort. Huxley's message is clear. Distraction and pleasure can be as effective for oppression as fear and suffering. A world that prioritizes hedonism above all else may seem utopian, but it raises unsettling questions. What if the controllers are right? What if pleasure is all that matters? And what if, by rejecting suffering, we lose something essential to our humanity?
Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, leave a like and a subscription. If you could keep listening to the video until now, congratulations. You are a warrior who have the capacity of bringing attention for a long time. Leave a comment saying this: I'm brave. Then you will let people know that you have the brave to improve your life quality, and you'll try to be better each day. Now bye until the next video. A big hug from the being of knowledge.